I just finished the most amazing audiobook called Espionage and Covert Operations: A Global History. It is by this guy whose name I cannot pronounce. It's a very thorough history of spies, of why they do what they do, how they do what they do. I found it really compelling, really well taught. But like I usually do, I learned a lot that can be referred back to what I do in my daily life, which is make films, and I wanted to share some of those things here with you. In the Cold War, a lot of people offered to spy for the Soviet Union, motivated by ideological reasons. They believed in communism and they wanted to do their part for the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union still offered to pay them. It insisted that they take its money as well. It didn't want people that were motivated solely by ideological reasons, because things could change, and things do change. People change their minds all the time, especially when they're working in close proximity to other spies and kind of see the dirty part of tradecraft. And they wanted their assets, the people that were spying for them, to have more than just the will. They wanted them to have a need. They wanted them to depend on the Soviet Union. And I'm assuming the same is true for the United States and Allied powers. I think this really struck a chord for me with filmmaking, because when you want to make a film, if it's a short or a feature or a music video, straight away you get a lot of people offering to help for free. And that's great. But you have to understand that unless there's some money on the line, these people might not show up on the day of the shoot, or they might leave early, or they might come late, or they might not be prepared. There's an old saying that if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys, but I think anything is better than nothing. It's wonderful to have a crew for free. People offering to work for free is never as good as when money is changing hands. It forms a commitment, it forms a bond, it gives you some security that the people will be there when you need them. In filmmaking and in spying, smart covert operatives and spies always have a way out. They're always looking at the exits, both physically, if they're meeting their contact, they always want to know where their escape plans are, or they are thinking psychologically, who can I make deals with if this goes south, if my handler gets caught, who else? They always need to have at least one or two or three exits, the more the better. This is exactly the same in film. If you have one place that you can get a scene and you can only be there at a certain time and everything works around that particular time and that falls through, you are so screwed. It's always good to have the thing that you really want to shoot and you really love, but then spend a little bit of time making sure you have a backup. It's the same with lights. If you have one light that works, that you really need, bring along a second one. It might not be as powerful or as large or whatever as the first one, but at least you'll have it. Have a backup camera body. I always bring my 5D Mark III to a shoot, even though I'm shooting with the C200, because heaven forbid if the C200 decides that day not to work, I don't have to stare at the client and say we all have to go home. I can always pull out my 5D, get something. It won't be as good, but it'll be something. Every time you have mission critical, anytime that there's a lot riding on something, you need at least two ways to accomplish it. The more the better. Part of the reason I make these videos is that I just think there's too much secrecy around the film production process. Too many people kind of keep hidden what they do in a way to keep control of it. And I think that it's really hard to make your films when people won't share how they go about their business. But there also is good reasons for keeping things discreetly. Information is definitely power, and you need to not keep it close to your chest necessarily, but just understand what the ramifications are and who needs to know what when. Spies are all about this. Their whole business is secrets. But for filmmakers, I think it's just as important, but it can be in a more subtle way. Directing, for instance, if you give an actor a note, say you shoot a scene and there's something about the actor's performance you would like to change. If you stand by the monitor and yell it over the set and say, hey, do it faster, you would never say that. give them some direction. If you do it in public and everyone else hears it, the next time you roll camera, everyone on set is going to be looking at the actor to see it and judge them how they incorporated in your notes. I mean, that's a lot of pressure, and the actor might do something more forced than they regularly would because they know everyone's watching. Whereas if you pull the actor aside and have a quiet word to them in private, only needs to take 2 seconds longer than if you yelled it from the monitor. Suddenly, that note is just for them, and no one else is going to judge their performance except you, who is the one that gave them the note. And suddenly they're in a much safer space in order to give a realistic or more switched on performance than they are if you feel like they're kind of performing for the crew and the other people that heard your direction. Another big aspect of this comes right down to budgets, which I know everyone is really interested in. I'm really interested in. I always want to know what films are made for and who got paid what, where, and when. The reason that those numbers are so hard to give out for any producer is that when you're selling the film, you want the people that are buying it to see it as an expensive commodity. You want them to think that you spent a lot of money on the film and that what they're buying is worth a lot of money. At the same time, you want to tell other people that the film was shot for very little so they can appreciate how far you stretched a dollar, how much creativity you used, how much creative problem solving you used in order to make a film for very little money. So there are always multiple budgets that float around about a film. It was made for $20,000. It was made for $200,000. Plus, it's never sure whether numbers incorporate the amount of money that the filmmaker put in time. You know, if you spend $10,000 on a feature film, but it takes you 5 years of your time to do, you're out there working other jobs and then to support yourself while you're putting in time pro bono into your own film. And, you know, that's not the same thing as a $10,000 movie. That's more like a $150,000 movie. I think there is a lot that spycraft, espionage, and covert operations can teach us about filmmaking, because the stakes for those people are sometimes life and death, and they make sure they do things correctly. They have an established way of doing what they do. And I think as a filmmaker, I've learned a lot from studying spies and reading books about spies and spycraft. I think it's a really compelling and absorbing field of human endeavor. Novelists like John le Carré do an amazing job of capturing the drama and the conflict and the life and death nature of covert operations as we kind of imagine them, to say nothing of, you know, the James Bond films and the more popcorn spy movies. These are just a couple of thoughts I had while listening to this amazing course. Check it out. Hope you enjoyed it. There's many more to come, and I will see you next time.